Word of a stunning attack on the massive U.S. military installation.
What the hell just happened?
Every week, we will attack you.
This is the flight deck. We're losing engine power.
They're calling the attacks the Blacklist.
Blacklist.
The Blacklist cannot be stopped.
One unit attack every 7 days.
Not by law. Not by diplomacy. Not by an army.
Splinter Cell Blacklist marks the 6th entry in the acclaimed stealth franchise, and 11 years on since we first stepped into the boots of Sam Fisher, we're still here dragging the old man through shadows and getting him to snap terrorists' necks. The game wastes no time in letting you continue this tradition, and we kick off with Sam barely managing to escape an attack on a US Air Force base in Guam. A terrorist cell calling themselves the Engineers claim responsibility and state that a series of escalating attacks on US soil called the Blacklist will occur weekly until the US government yields to their demand to recall all American soldiers stationed abroad. So, with Sam Fisher heading up the newly formed Fourth Echelon, he sets out to save the day. So what's changed since Sam's last outing? Well, Splinter Cell Blacklist is a blend of the previous titles, Splinter Cell Conviction, and the classic Splinter Cell titles. Really, this is the game that Conviction probably should have been in the first place instead of the muddled action title we ended up with, because now in Splinter Cell Blacklist, stealth is actually a viable option again. And although it does slip up at times, you can actually play the majority of the game like a stealth title. If you want to run around capping everyone you see with an assault rifle, then, well, shame on you, but Splinter Cell Blacklist does try to cater for you as well. In fact, there are 3 playstyles the game accounts for: Ghost, Panther and Assault. The Ghost is my preferred style. It's the one in which players will stay undetected while avoiding enemies or using non-lethal takedowns. Panther players are the ones who leap out of the shadows and stab a guy in the neck before swiftly disappearing again. You're likely to be detected, but enemies won't know where you are until it's too late. Finally, we have the Assault players. You're the hapless agent who sprints through the level making as much noise as possible. You don't care about being discreet, you just want to see blood. You're the kind of player who's still impressed by things like explosions and slow motion. Anyway, the developers have done a pretty decent job of designing the levels in a way that's compatible with all 3 playstyles, but as previously mentioned, the game does occasionally slip up and force you to play in a way that you don't want to. There's one level where Sam just waltzes onto a train and you're forced to engage in a linear gunfight. There's another forced first-person shooter section for God knows what reason. And there's another face-palm-inducing scene where you're escaping down an Iranian motorway in a van and you use an aerial drone to fire miniguns and rockets at your pursuers. There's civilians driving in the opposite direction that easily could have been harmed, which makes it stupid enough. But if you play the game yourself and have some story context to it, then it will really hit you just how dumb it is. But when you're not engaged in these crappy force sections, Splinter Cell Blacklist is actually pretty fun. The developers have managed to recapture the thrill of making your way through a level without being detected, which I felt was lacking in Splinter Cell Conviction. I found it more rewarding to limit my use of gadgets and avoid enemy contact where possible, but sneaking around and quietly choking out dudes is satisfying too. It almost feels kind of like a puzzle game at times, where I'll be trying to figure out the best route through the area and nail the perfect timing to avoid enemies. A variety of enemy types keeps you on your toes also. There's the heavily armoured enemy, which you have to approach from behind to take down. There's also the guard dogs, which can track your scent, meaning you have to keep moving or you'll get detected. And there's also better equipped enemies later in the game that can spot you in the shadows too. So overall, the game does mix it up to maintain a steady challenge. Should you want to utilise your tools to help you get things done, the game has quite a selection of gadgets and guns you can choose from before each mission. You can purchase a variety of gadgets designed for different purposes, like the sticky camera, the noisemaker or tri-rotor for recon and distraction. There's sleeping gas to quietly disable hostiles, there's smoke grenades and flashbangs to help you escape enemy fire, and then there's frag and incendiary grenades if you want to go lethal. There's a generous selection of weaponry too, ranging from pistols, submachine guns, assault rifles, shotguns and sniper rifles, and there's also non-lethal weapons like the stun gun and the tactical crossbow, which can fire various bolt types. Apart from equipment, you can also customise your outfit for the first time in the series. You can choose different tops, trousers, gloves and boots, which all have a bearing on your stealth and armour ratings. While we're on the subject of things you can do before each mission, I should point out that Splinter Cell Blacklist doesn't feature a main menu. Instead, when you load up the game, you're dropped on board your mobile airborne headquarters called the Paladin. It's clear that Ubisoft have taken cues from BioWare because the Paladin is similar to Mass Effect's Normandy in that you're free to walk around and chat to your crew before taking on a mission. Chatting to each crew member will give you a bit of dialogue relating to the previous mission, but it also lets you access things like upgrades for the Paladin or loadout customization. Crew members also offer unique co-op missions, but these can also be launched through the Strategic Mission Interface, or SMI. The SMI is a global map which highlights all available missions. From here you can access campaign levels, co-op missions and the Spies vs Mercs multiplayer mode. The issue with the lack of main menu comes when you first start the game and you're thrown directly into cutscenes in the opening mission before you get a chance to tweak any control or video options, meaning you then have to pause the game when it starts and customise your settings from there, instantly breaking any immersion. Things like this are better suited to console, where it's all about jumping straight into the game, but on PC, where customization is king, having no main menu isn't very smart. Story-wise, Splinter Cell Blacklist is nothing special. It's pretty much the standard terrorists want to attack America, so it's up to you to save the day plot. Standard stuff, really. That said, I did find the main antagonist to be pretty charismatic for a terrorist leader, but he's not quite as memorable as some other notable video game villains. He is a step above your generic evil terrorist villain though. It probably helps that the voice actor did a good job in the role. However, I am disappointed to say that I'm not a fan of the new voice actor for Sam Fisher. While there was nothing inherently wrong with new actor Eric Johnson's performance, his voice just isn't right for the character. Officially, Sam Fisher is in his 50s, Eric Johnson is in his 30s, and you can tell. Veteran actor Michael Ironside brought a unique character and personality to the voice of Sam Fisher that fit wonderfully. Eric Johnson sounds way too young, and his voice is just a generic American drone that has none of the character, charm, or wit that Ironside brought. Johnson can't be blamed for the script, of course, but it's disappointing nonetheless. The official reason for replacing Ironside, according to Ubisoft, is that they needed someone to do motion capture, facial capture, and voice acting at the same time.
We needed somebody that could bring the physicality to the dialogue, meaning it needed to be captured at the same time. So we needed to have breathiness, we needed to have exertion.
Well, rubbish, I say. Nobody complained that Kevin Conroy didn't do the motion capture for Batman, or that David Hayter didn't do the motion capture for Solid Snake. It's just really not that important, and frankly, I think it's quite insulting to Michael Ironside's acting ability to think that he couldn't make himself sound slightly out of breath in a recording booth. That said, the cinematics are of a pretty high quality, barring Sam Fisher's new voice. Though I did encounter an audio bug on several occasions during both cutscenes and gameplay where one character's line would be delayed and then start just before the other character says their line, so both characters ended up speaking over each other, making it hard to understand what anyone is saying. Jump into any of the co-op modes though and you'll soon forget about any of these issues. With 14 missions to choose from, plus an additional 2 if you purchase the deluxe edition, there's plenty to keep you and a friend busy. There are 4 mission varieties available. One mission type sees you hacking a series of objectives while avoiding detection, another tasks you with eliminating all enemies in each zone without being detected, another is basically horde mode, and finally there's a mini co-op campaign. Excluding the 4 co-op campaign missions, all of these can be played alone as well as with a partner. Collaborating with a partner to plan the perfect double team attack on the enemies is fun, but I often found on the levels where we had to hack a series of objectives that my partner and I had split up to tackle different areas of the map by ourselves. When the teamwork does happen, it's great fun, but I don't think the game does enough to make cooperative play essential. I feel the horde mode demands tighter teamwork though. Your objective is to take on 20 waves of increasingly difficult enemies, and once you pass the 15th wave, the difficulty really ramps up. Sloppy play is met with swift death, courtesy of remote-controlled explosive drones, heavily armoured soldiers, or vicious dogs. The spin Ubisoft have put on this horde mode is pretty clever. To take home your earnings, you have to extract, but extraction is only available every 5 waves. So you always have to decide whether you want to take the money and run at a lower wave, or try your luck and fight through the next 5, with no guarantee of success. As for the co-op campaign, I felt it was pretty short. I did have fun with it, but I think it did encourage an assault playstyle more than a stealthy one. This is especially true on one particular level where one player runs through the streets shooting enemies, while the other takes control of an airborne drone and fires rockets down. I wasn't a fan of that section. Finally, we have Spies vs Mercs, making its much anticipated return after being absent in Conviction, and it feels just as fresh and unique today as it did when it made its debut in 2004. For those not in the know, Spies vs Mercs pits the nimble, stealthy spies in third person against heavily armed, slower mercs in first person. Admittedly, I haven't played a whole lot of multiplayer, but it doesn't seem to have changed from when I played it at a press event 2 weeks prior to release. Spies vs Mercs is fun. Personally, I preferred the more subdued, suspense-filled 2v2 classic mode to the 4v4 frantic, fast-paced action of Blacklist mode. But they're both very much enjoyable in their own ways. It's very teamwork orientated, so going lone wolf won't do you or your team any favours. But that's a good thing in my opinion. Die-hard Spies vs Mercs veterans may find that some gameplay mechanics and the pace of this game might not be to their taste, however. Multiplayer here is a little quicker than it used to be, and it can be annoying when you're playing as a merc and you have enemy spies charging around the map with their invisibility cloaks and insta-killing you head-on before you even realise they're there. But if anything, I reckon that just teaches you to make better use of your gadgets to weed them out. Unfortunately, multiplayer does have connection issues right now. I was able to sort out my problems by opening the required ports in my router settings, but my buddy did the same thing and he just cannot join any multiplayer session or join me to play co-op. We found a workaround for co-op by using a program called Tungle to get into the same session, but really that isn't acceptable. Until Ubisoft issue an official patch to fix these issues, you'd be taking a bit of a gamble purchasing the game for the multiplayer portion. The issues don't end with multiplayer connectivity though. Ubisoft are notorious for their PC ports, which often range from dodgy to downright broken, and while Splinter Cell Blacklist could have definitely been a hell of a lot worse, it also could have been much better. On the plus side, Ubisoft have added a few additional bells and whistles to the graphics options, resulting in a fantastic looking game. The downside is that in DirectX 11 mode, the frame rate becomes unstable, often jumping back and forth between 60 and 30 frames a second, and sometimes dipping even lower. Running in DirectX 9 mode results in a much smoother experience, but it does mean you won't be able to enable tessellation, horizon-based ambient occlusion, or crank the shadow detail up to ultra. Fortunately, the image difference is fairly minimal, but regardless, this is an issue that Ubisoft need to address. Also, the game doesn't properly support the 16:10 aspect ratio, slapping black bars at the top and bottom of the screen, as you can see in this video. That aside, Splinter Cell Blacklist is a great game. Personally, I don't think it can rival Chaos Theory, but after straying so far from the series' roots with Conviction, this is definitely a step in the right direction. Apart from a few hiccups, the game is just great fun to play, and the wealth of content on offer will definitely keep you busy for some time. I recommend this one, and as always, you can pick it up from our shop over at gamingdragons.com.
Make it happen.